Good morning, and welcome to Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole, where we are rising in faith and thriving in purpose. And today I have a very special guest here. I have the newly minted Dr. Kahlil Green, LMSW. He is a professor of social work at the University of the District of Columbia and a licensed therapist specializing in Black youth and men in the DC area. He recently defended his dissertation at the Morgan State University, where his research focused on the long term impact of corporal punishment on African American men. Deeply committed to faith and community, Dr. Green is an executive producer for the Saved Ish podcast through New Bethel Baptist Church. His work blends clinical expertise, cultural awareness, and spiritual connection to uplift and empower. Let's welcome him to the show today.
Thank you for having me. My
Yes.
bio sounds really good coming from you. It sounds
A
very
little enthusiasm, but hey, that's your facts is facts, right?
yeah,
Facts
indeed.
are facts. Well, you got to get used to that, Doc. Yeah, it is definitely a transition. So today is actually very special because we are going to be talking about your research.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So today's episode is titled Silent Scars, the Emotional Toll of Tough Love. And so I'm just going to give the people a little overview, right? Because we're not going to get too scholarly, but I think this is a topic
Yeah.
we've all experienced.
Yeah.
And it's organic. So I love that you chose a topic that like matters and that a lot of people experience. So corporal punishment has long been a controversial topic in parenting, especially within the African American community. Many were raised with the belief that a whooping, because I know I got some where I had to go outside and pick a switch, right? That these things build character and keep children in line. Now, the Bible does say, spare the rod, spoil the child. But what if those practices have deeper, long lasting effects on mental health, relationships, and even the way that individuals move throughout society? So, in this episode, Dr. Green is going to help us to really unpack the findings of his groundbreaking dissertation research that explored this specific topic, the social, emotional, and psychological outcomes for African American men specifically. So, we're going to look at the intersection of discipline, trauma, masculinity, systemic racism, and attachment. I said we wouldn't go get scholarly, but it's kind of hard not to, right? But I know we can talk about it in a way that is going to be digestible and just real.
Yes. That's my goal. Before we dig into the substance of the topic,
Mhm.
I want to say that the purpose of my research was to make it very much so accessible to our people.
Yes, good.
Otherwise, what are you doing it for?
Right,
So
right.
that was my purpose, and particularly to highlight how the way we are going about raising
Hmm.
our children, particularly our sons,
Hmm.
is impacting how they're able to show up as human beings
Hmm.
as they emerge into their adulthood as well as their adolescence.
Yeah, but that trickles over into fatherhood,
That's
into
right.
marriage and relationships. And so not only are we pointing out like the intersections, but also how we can break some generational cycles and preserve dignity and like people have loving experiences and like relationships and also cultural understanding. So let's get into it. What inspired this work? How did you land on this topic, right? Because for those of you who don't are unfamiliar with like PhDs, EDDs, doctorates, right? Like we choose our research topics. So best topics I say are ones that we're like related to, care about, or have an interest in. But how did you land on this topic? Like what really inspired your work?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, Dr. Nicole. This started really from childhood, and not to say, I tell people all the time, not to say that I was whooped in the severe
Yeah.
arena. It wasn't nowhere near severe in comparison to some of my classmates or friends, some of their stories, but I did have a share.
Mhm.
And what I noticed was, I mean, it's funny because when I begin to tell you this part of the story, it's going to put a part of the community that I come from on blast, but it's the truth.
Listen, I've been telling my family business on a little bit on
Yeah,
every episode.
yeah, yeah. So what happened? What happened was I started to notice as a younger man, and when I say younger man, I
Mhm.
mean like elementary age. Yeah, I started to notice that like there was so much. There was to me what felt like a weird obsession or pride
Okay.
around adult black people and them disciplining their kids in that manner. It seemed gross to me. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was like, there's something not quite not right about this. And I experienced it primarily in the church that I grew up in.
Okay.
I grew up in a Baptist church.
Okay.
To give you context of this church was founded by uh, a lot of the original enslaved Africans
Huh?
in that particular area, which is this in the area I'm talking about. For those who are wondering, like, where is he from? I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, specifically Arlington, Texas, and the church that I
I
grew up in.
knew that in all the years I've
Yeah,
known you through Howard.
yeah, yeah. I'm from Texas, and I'm particularly the church that I grew up in was a city that was right next to Arlington called Mansfield, and on the west side of Mansfield was where specifically the black folks lived, and that church, which was Bethlehem Baptist Church and still exists today, was established. And so I got a chance to see that behavior a lot. And then it was like little things, for example, going to the store and seeing how other parents would discipline their kids and it was always a very uncomfortable feeling. And it kind of felt like it appeared to me is that it was a combination of parent, like, for example, my mom would want me to be out of the way of that. But it seemed like there was a threat of reprimanding for you, and you weren't even really involved.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just always something's wrong about this.
Yeah.
And not being in a position to articulate it
Label
and
it.
label it. There wasn't a language around and granted, in some contexts, corporal punishment was talked about in my family. And it wasn't the first resort
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
But I still thought something was wrong with it. And it's funny because even I can even remember when my parents transitioned into really using that with me. Like I was giving a warning around it, like that the punishment was getting ready to become harsher.
Was it an age thing or behavioral thing?
Yeah, it may have been a combination of both, but I can remember so the root of it comes from looking at our community and seeing like I don't know if this feels normal, and I found that other cultures participated in that practice, but it just didn't seem like in the same context. I noticed it. I knew that as I got older, it was one of the fears that I had as a emerging younger man, as I, having a family. I was like, I don't want to practice this with my kids.
Yeah.
But feeling like this was the only way to have it being conditioned that this is the only way that you
Conditioning.
can raise your child correctly. And then also like from a biblical standpoint, how that verse is misused.
Okay. Come on.
A rod is not meant to beat, it's meant to guide and correct. And that gives you like black folks use that terribly out of context.
Yeah. And I hear the social worker in you at the same time.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That was a strength-based perspective. That was a lovely perspective shift, and I never thought about it, but other times where you hear the rod, Moses used that to like, that was what he was using walking, guiding the children of Israel to part the Red Sea, get the water from the rock. Like, I think did he use that from with the water on the rock too? But you're so
Yeah.
right. Thank you for
Yeah.
reframing that and bringing that into perspective. Like the rod is not just, it's not
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I that's the deeper origin stories of that topic. But how it resurfaced was really in as I am walking into being officially a doctor, I am starting to become more cavalier about telling my story.
You said officially walking. You are walking in doctor
Yes, yes, yes.
doctorhood. I don't know what to call it, but you in it. Welcome to the club.
Right. So the story was, this wasn't my first go around into a doctorate program.
Okay.
So I was in a doctorate program at Howard as well initially, and it was counseling psych
Okay.
and attempting to figure out what topic. And similar advice was given. It was like, hey, it needs to be a topic that you can be comfortable with
Right.
wrestling with for many years. You won't get tired of it. And I was like, is that? And so originally, I wanted to study the long term impact of corporal punishment on African Americans,
Okay.
meaning Black
Yeah,
women
that's a
and
lot.
Black men.
But you can keep this going. You can get
I can
so much more research out of this topic.
absolutely, absolutely. And so that was the original push. And what I'll say is that in that space, there were certain people that didn't necessarily support. They didn't support the topic.
That's why you had to come home to social work.
I was called home.
Yes,
Yes.
you were called home. Those things
Yes.
happen. That is the divine redirection.
Yeah. And it was definitely very much so necessary. The journey around it being narrowed down to African American men was not really, it wasn't necessarily my choice either. It was by, my direction of my chair.
Okay.
He was like, you're not gonna have enough time to handle, you know, both populations. You're just not gonna have enough time. You need to focus. We're trying to get you out of here.
He's
Dr.
not wrong, but
Lorenz,
this voice, who is he?
that's Dr. Lorenz Van Fleitman.
Okay, I've not met him, but this is
You were on.
I couldn't. I was teaching in the Pure Case Management Institute here on campus at Howard. So I
So you
wasn't
didn't
able
hear
to
him.
attend. No, I wanted to, but like it went and yeah, I wasn't able to get on.
Those who know him, when I do it, they laugh
I can
profusely because
tell because you committed.
his voice is nasally. So
Uh-huh. Okay. So he was saying you gotta narrow it down to black men. 'Cause that could be a huge feat, right? Like, trying to
yeah,
get you out of he's so right, and I think when we
yeah,
come into these programs, we think this is the best paper we're gonna write in our lives, and our whole identity rests upon it, like, the pressure is crazy, and it wasn't until I was deep in my data, like, analysis where it finally clicked, like, "Jeannie, it's a paper. Just write the paper. You know how to write papers." But getting past that and trying to narrow it down and wanting it to be this really big thing is hard.
yeah.
So I'm glad you got that good guidance. So you narrowed it down to black men. Then
All of it seemed like it was gargantuan, but the biggest thing was literature review. My
Mhm.
literature review is substantial because I'm not just looking at corporal punishment in the context of what other scholars have studied about it in reference to its impact. I also looked at it from a historical
Yeah.
standpoint. Like there's a part of my literature review where I'm talking about how corporal punishment has been used across antiquity in various different countries,
Mhm. Yeah.
such as China
Yeah.
or Egypt,
Mhm.
Greece.
Mhm.
Am I missing another place? America.
That was a given.
But and I speak about the history of corporal punishment in the context of like the enslavement period, particularly with African Americans, but then also in African American families post. I talk about it in the context of social work. I talk about it in the context of policy and how the definitions have varied across states and how it is
Mm.
still primarily permissible in the home as opposed to a number of states have abolished it in the school. So I walk people through an extensive understanding. And there was things that I left out. Like for example, when we were still crafting I also talk about it in the context of where it falls into like how it contributes to child maltreatment. those cases. I talk about it in that context. I can't forget that. But
Mhm.
in the development of the literature review, my chair and I, he it was funny because he didn't want to create more work for somebody who has a tendency to overthink. But then there were certain suggestions that he would make about certain scholars like E. Franklin Frazier
Uh-huh.
around the narratives that he caught around the migrations of African American families and how he was capturing those practices. And
Yeah.
he was like, he mentioned that to me. It was like there was some desire for me to have that material, but at the same time knowing that I couldn't fully touch on that in here. And then also he would give me. It was funny because he would give me pushback. He's like, you want to sit here and write about Egypt and Kemet.
Did he know you're also an alpha?
He knows.
Okay, okay,
He knows. He
okay.
knows. I mean, I think the thing about it was, yeah, everybody's dissertation and their topic is important to them. I think because of this particular topic, I wanted to make sure that I gave a thorough account as possible because what I was going to experience is that there were going to be a number of people that were going to challenge the validity of like, well, I got my ass whooped. I turned out all right. And
And
so
that's what we say.
I needed to, and that's another thing that I love. I love our people so much that I'm willing to call us out for the sake of us being better.
Yeah,
And that's what this is really about. Like, if you're uncomfortable with this topic, good. Because I'm challenging the whole purpose of this was to challenge how we choose to raise each other,
yeah.
into existence that is already challenging our existence. So,
Say that one
you
more
know,
time. That was rich.
I I'm challenging I'm challenging us on how we raise each other into an existence that that already challenges our existence.
Yeah, yeah.
And so and I needed to have a very defiant and cynical posture
Okay.
because because I knew that I was going to deal with a lot of pushback. It's the same. This conversation is no different when you talk to some people about like soul food.
Well, but the difference is with soul food, that's completely like individual, where you are building this upon research, right? But like people are just gonna hear that, and you're right, they're gonna, well, I turned out fine. Yeah. And then there are all these other unintended things that you think are not connected. And I know I'm sure we'll get into what some of those
Right.
findings were and how this showed up and impact people and the different areas of development in life where it's not all or nothing, which is also another part, I think, of corporal punishment, that rigidity, that like tension.
That distortion, that cognitive distortion
Come on, let's talk.
that came from somewhere. And
Yes.
and let me say this, since you brought that up, in the context of femininity, with femininity, there's more wiggle room, but in the context of masculinity, you're kind of forced and conditioned into all or nothing thinking.
No, we experience it too, unless it's a
I know
specific thing. But yeah.
I know you all do, but I'm saying in the context of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a man. I'm not saying that women don't experience it.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that the posture that we typically are forced to maintain is that we can't be traditionally we have not been allowed to be nuanced. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not to say what has happened with black women. It's not by accident that black women haven't been experienced higher levels of infemization.
Yeah. Cause I was gonna say
That's not
around
by
like
accident.
purity and things like that. That's where
Exactly.
our big one is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you all experience it. It's still
It's
different
different.
because of you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, that is a big thing. What I would say is that we ironically enforce our all or nothing thinking into each other. It's a community issue. I would argue that, but the fluidity or nuances of one's emotions in somebody who presents and identifies as a man that's black in this experience, it becomes really complicated because there's not room for you to experience nuance.
Or express
or
nuance.
express it, to express more so, correct. So you have to find other ways to cope with that. Some people, use the arts as a if I tell people all the time, if you wanted to have a better understanding of the emotionality of particularly black men, you need to see how they show up in the in artistic expression. You need to see how they show
Yeah. Yeah.
throughout. You need to listen to them when they debate about sports, because I tell people all the time, and it's a little off topic, but I tell people all the time that sports conversation, especially on various different platforms, is gossip. It's reality TV. It is.
I like that. You're so right. You're
It
so
is.
right.
It's gossip,
It is
especially when they
gossip.
bring up what the GM said, and that's
Who you
gossip.
know who you sound like.
Who do I sound like?
Stephen A. Smith a little bit. Does that sound like what you was about to give?
Yeah, I mean, no, but but it's true. And so again, just to give context, as I stated in the dissertation, as I said to you, or say this audience now, is that I want people to consider. Don't look at corporal punishment as the reason why we are the way we are, but think of it more as a main ingredient or a conduit that plays a significant role of how we get to show up or how we don't get to show up. And in this context, I particularly focused on how men get to show up and not get to show up. So that was, consider it like a bridge
Okay.
to somewhere else.
Okay. I like where this going. You could keep flowing. Cause it sounded like you was getting revved up. I ain't want to interrupt, or don't feel like you gotta stop. If the spirit move you, keep on going, doc.
Oh my goodness. But yes, so in that process, we had to figure out, like, okay, well, how are you going to what theories
Yeah.
would you use to structure this research project? And so it came down to ecological systems theory,
Okay. So
because
give
we
give
needed.
give the people a simple definition of what that is. I know that's
In
normal for
other
us in
words,
social work.
ecological systems theory is a theory that looks at the functioning of something or someone, particularly in the various different sub parts of our environment.
Mhm.
And they range from, there's six of them, but I'm not going to describe it into that. What it ranges from is what we call the micro to the macro environments. In the middle, we call meso. And so those environments, the micro can consist as quickly as somebody's family, uh, their friends, their immediate community. The meso can be considered more so, like, in a larger sense, or like the larger organizations, or like, for example, the city or the state that lives in. And then the larger context of the macro is like the country, or even the larger demographic of what that person may belong to. So, for example, us as African Americans, we statistically make 13% of this population. So that's the macro way of looking at us. Now, again, I gave you all three examples of how ecological systems can be viewed, but there's actually six systems.
Yeah.
But that's a simpler way of simply looking at it. We wanted to look at how the child rearing practice of corporal punishment impacted how, or got reinforced, that practice got reinforced in the
Uh-huh.
various different environments. So that is why I use that
Yeah,
that
that makes
theoretical
sense.
framework. So that's why we wanted to see, how does the nation enforce the idea that you step out of line, you're gonna get dealt with harshly.
Yeah, that's giving tough love.
Yeah, so, like, that's, what I'm saying. Like, I needed to view it in that context. So that's why I chose ecological systems theory. Now, the second theory was got suggested to me, and I understood the reason behind it because it did make sense. The second one was called attachment theory.
Of
It was by
course.
John.
I love attachment theory.
It's by John Bowlby. If you're not familiar with it, essentially, attachment theory is a theory that looks at how people's early experiences with parental figures, or familiar figures for that matter, shapes how they are secure in their relationship dynamics, but particularly in their ability to attach or not to attach. And so was convinced.
Can't
I was
wait to hear
convinced.
what follows.
convinced that um again, corporal punishment played a role with families in how particularly black men became either secure in their attachments or insecure. I believe that it played a role. Again,
Not a
remember,
blueprint. Sorry, my brain is going over here too. I'm like, it depends
yeah,
on how soon it was introduced, what was
sure,
introduced, and how.
sure, sure. Sure. So again, I'm going to keep saying this throughout this conversation. I want you all to
Mm.
remember, I'm not labeling corporal punishment as the cause of these things. Consider it a main ingredient or a conduit
Mhm.
to said results, to said social outcomes. There's an association, but it is not. Oh yeah, that's the only reason. It's like no, because there's a much larger way that we as a culture discipline, which some would argue it would call it around punitive, which is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
But we're focusing on corporal punishment today. So with that being said, those were the two theories that were used to contextualize this study.
Okay.
From there, we needed to figure out, okay, how are you going to gather this data? Now, I was always in favor of qualitative research, but
Man,
I
it's a
didn't even
lot
know
of
which
work.
approach. Yeah. You think qualitative research is a lot of work?
It was when I did interviews for my stuff. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it because, like, clearly I talk, right? But, like, when you gotta
For
go through
sure.
those interviews and then do all the coding and
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get
yep.
to there. So here's the thing: the approach that I chose to use was interpretive
Okay.
phenomenological analysis, better known as IPA. And what that style is, it allows you to have a semi-structured interview with a potential participant, and you are to gather information about whatever particularly their lived experience from that interview, from that transcription, from that interview. You become the interpreter. You become the interpreter of said information. So that means there's some level of wiggle room in
Yeah.
some of the things that get said.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't my program, yes, did train me in qualitative research, but coming from a quantitative standpoint, it took me a while to really walk into that because I was really afraid of like, well, I don't want to impose.
Mm.
And so the idea of interpretive phenomenological analysis is that we're in the tip to understand what the participant is making sense of their experience
Right.
while we're going through it, is that the process of that is called sense making. And so I had to jump into that kind of late,
Okay.
but nonetheless I did.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we decided with. You have any questions so far before I keep going?
I'm tracking, but then I was gonna ask just like then what were some of the like historical and cultural contexts, like whether we're talking about like you mentioned slavery, we're talking about survival, systemic oppression,
Sure.
all those things. So like how what did you ground it in, right? Because you were talking about that too, like kind of like one wanting to be protective of the community too, but
Sure.
also to frame it in a way where it could be digestible at the same
Yeah.
time.
So I talked about how corporal punishment was used in the enslavement period, and long story, African American households at the time that were enslaved used it as a means to, well, I don't want the overseers to get a hold of you, so I would rather me deal with you. So
Mhm.
I know that you will be safer under my brutalization.
But it's still brutalization.
It's still brutalization.
Yep. Yeah. It's so many
So
levels because
that's
people raise their kids like that now where they are like, "Well, I don't want you to go out into the world thinking it's this, or that," and then they, like, really snuff out their light.
yeah, and that's
They stomp on their
yeah,
dreams.
yeah,
The world don't owe you nothing. But then it's
yeah.
like, "But you're treating me worse than the world."
Yeah. And black, you know, and I understand that it's meant to be a protective factor, but it also
Mhm.
is as you would say a light dimmer in the sense that
Yeah.
we we vilif we we're guilty of like, vilifying and demonizing our children's normal child behavior.
That's
Well,
the
we're
one.
we're very we turn them into criminals based off of them being inquisitive children wanting to learn about the world around them. And what we teach them is that you can't afford to learn the world or explore the world or to examine the world like your white counterparts. That look that your mama gives you when you're in a store and you see like
Don't you
as
touch nothing.
that and it's understandable, but it's also sad too because it is one of the first teaching moments that you
You can't do that. Yep.
and so like
Yeah.
one of the main points that I will drive home today is that this is one of the main tools if at one point white people or people who do benefit even outside of being white of systemic oppression, if they were the overseers of systemic oppression, we in turn have become the janitors, our own custodians of our own oppression. And this is one of the main tools that we use as a means to keep the system running because this is how we abide. This is how we teach our kids how to abide. And so my argument is like I hear it, but the other side of it is that as Trayvon Martin's parents did them whooping Trayvon Martin's ass as a child stop him from getting killed by George Zimmerman.
Nothing to do with it.
As George Floyd, you know, him calling his mama, and I'm sure his mama probably swung on him when he was coming. I'm sure she
He's
probably
saying that
did.
because he was a big boy.
You know what I'm saying? I'm sure she did. Did it stop him from getting choked? Did it stop Breonna Taylor from getting raped? And to some context, yes, I understand the protective factor sense of us learning how to de-escalate situations with law enforcement or to appear subservient. I'm not saying that it's not 100%. There's no validity in that, but overall, when it comes to the livelihood or humanity of Americans, the establishment overall has shown us time and time again. No matter if you get your ass whooped or not, we gonna kill you just off a general principle.
How you look, how you
That's right.
present.
So in our minds, we believe that's the evidence based practice. I think black folks look at corporal punishment as an evidence based practice.
It's evidence of something.
She was like, "No, he didn't use scholarly evidence," but I do. They look at it as a let me say this as a faith evidence based practice. Let me say that they see it as a faith evidence based practice. Why? Because it's also informed. You know where I'm going.
I know where you're going, but say it for the audience.
It's I call it a faith evidence-based practice because it is informed by a large number of our culture's beliefs in Christianity, which going back to the verse in Proverbs, spare the rod, spoil the child, as well as our historical context of how we experienced it here in the enslavement period. We see it, okay, well, this gets you to immediately stop. I don't have to worry about your behavior. So I mean, it was that. I conducted 16 interviews with 16 African American men ranging in the ages, I think as young as I think the youngest was 24, the oldest was like 60.
You got a nice span.
Yeah, I had boomers all the way to young millennials.
Yeah,
Yeah. I didn't have no Gen Z
that would be really
or
interesting.
yeah, Gen Z or Alpha. That would have been interesting. I didn't have them.
Right, but I think your demographic was appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So as you're talking, I was just thinking about my experience growing up and when you're using when you were just basically saying corporal punishment at home doesn't stop certain things from happening, right? And when I think back about the boys that I knew specifically who were going to juvie in middle school, I can't
Yeah.
remember if there was anyone in elementary, but those that did go to juvie, they were getting their mamas and some of the
Working them.
dads, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like, I didn't see it, but you know it. Like, that behavior outside is a reflection sometimes of what's happening at home, and in some cases, that's the reason why they're acting up. in public because one, there's not that room for expression that you talked about.
Right.
They're going internal. If we're talking about attachment, their needs are not being met how they need them to be met. They don't have the experience of feeling safe, finding pleasure in them. They don't have the experience of attunement, essentially. You know what I mean? Like all those
Mhm.
different factors that go into attachment that develop a healthy sense of self. And when corporal punishment is too intense, it erodes at a person's ability to develop self respect. Because how can you have self respect when you're disrespected and some of the language that's used is venomous and towards children? Children, like you're trying to toughen him up when, baby, you're really abusing him and you're setting him up to go abuse others. And you're
Yeah.
teaching him this is how we deal with people. This is how we deal with people we love.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah. And at a young, like I said, at a young age, I said, what's the difference between this and and people in domestic violence? And a
It's
lot
all
of people didn't want
connected.
to touch.
It's all
They didn't want to
connected.
touch. I was like, to me, the way I look at it, black folks, I know we have struggled. I'm not denying it, but the way I look at it is like, if we can't see our stuff, why would we expect another group of people who they have interest in to not see our stuff to see our stuff?
But let's be clear, our going back because everything in enslavement, nobody wanted to see the stuff because it was that bad. It was so brutal. It was traumatic.
Yeah.
It was whatever egregious, whatever like strong language you can use. So why are we talking about it? But then it didn't change anything.
Yeah.
But you know what? Recently, I've been more curious about tears. And how that's the other thing. What you crying for, right? And that to me goes into corporal punishment, the
Yeah.
expression
Yeah.
of it,
Absolutely.
right? Our tears are so dope. Because we have three kind of like types of tears. We got the basal tears that help with like the normal like functioning, breaking down bacteria that gets in our eyes or whatever. Then we have like the reflective tears that are more cleansing and more water based to help when we're like there's an irritant, like you cutting onions, the pollen, right? Like, and then you have the emotional tears that have like four different like chemicals and hormones in them. One of them, one we literally release cortisol when we cry, right? And we know that's attached to stress levels. So you can take your stress levels down just by crying, but we told don't cry. We also have
Boy,
yeah, uh-huh.
if I would have looked at that,
Oh yeah, you could work this in easy. You welcome. You can write your little article or whatever. We're not saying little in 2025. You can write an article or whatever. But another one that was in there that was really it was like the can't pronounce it. It was like the ACTH something. It was something hormone. But this one, it says it is an endogenous hormone. I mean, an endogenous opioid. So literally, you cry. There's a pain. Our tears have a built-in opioid to help ease our pain physically and emotionally. But we not crying out here. And there's other impacts. And I'm like, all you need is a good cry. Not all, but it's huge.
it's funny, the conscious brothers and sisters of our community, they talked about the idea of knowledge itself. And when I hear, I feel like my topic, and even to what you're speaking about, it still speaks to the idea. There's so much about who we are, what we are, really don't understand.
Yes, the human body, we rely on what they teach us in health class. Unless you
Oh,
become a doctor, and even if you become a doctor, you might have your specialties, but they may not be going that deep into
yeah,
it. There's so much about this body, this brain, that it really
yeah,
can't heal itself, but we don't know. We don't know where to
yeah,
start. And then we have so much
yeah,
stuff to unlearn, like the
yeah,
programming. And there was something you said earlier. It was like a rhetorical question, but I had an answer. But a lot of this, even with, like with corporal punishment, it's our programming. We're not challenging
yes,
the programming. We're not
that's right,
exploring that
that's
this is
right.
doing more harm than good. We're just running it because we know how to run it. But it's like if it's not working, it's not really keeping our sons and daughters safe, then what are we doing?
Because that's all I know, and it's too uncomfortable.
So
It's too
it's
uncomfortable for my ego to challenge
but
what.
they're not gonna say that part. They're not gonna say
But
that second
that's
part.
what it
That
is.
is.
That's what it is. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely uncomfortable to change, although change is inevitable. They romanticize the idea of revolution and like, through violent acts and of taking anarchy and taking over, the government. I said, but no, the most revolutionary things are is how we choose to treat each other differently. The
Come
fact that we have
on.
peace in our
Yeah.
interactions, the fact that we have stability in our households. However you choose to build your household, that there's stability. That whether you subscribe to heteronormatives or not, like
Yeah.
there's stability. That is the most revolutionary
Yeah,
act.
because you know what it is. People are also still conditioned from things happening to them, right? They're
Yeah,
operating from that. So they want to see something externally, not understanding the power that they have internally and what they cultivate in themselves, in their homes, in the ways that they're showing up, like you said, and loving people. Like that is one of the most powerful things because if we all did that, we wouldn't really have to rely on just our homes. If these negative things are happening to people, you're coming out into the world and people are treating you good and you feel loved and like you're being affirmed in a different way and you're learning this is not how it is. Because there's
yeah,
some people that brutality is their norm. They think that that's how this goes.
yeah. When I was in high school, it's funny too. Because my father made the same observation.
Observation was that oh, okay, go ahead.
He noticed, he's like he's like, "A lot of kids your age, like, they all just real angry."
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was funny too because, again, no, I marked and noted that how I interacted with my parents wasn't quite the same as other Black
Okay.
families. And what did that mean is that, my parents, I was a little bit more ch not a little bit more, a lot more. I was more challenge oriented with my parents, and not that it was disrespectful, but I questioned.
You were a scholar from way back.
Yeah, yeah, and I think both of them would proudly admit to that. Was it always convenient for them? No, or was
No.
it always no? But I know now. It's definitely now. With most recently the turn of events, I know they could they could definitely be proud of.
The ink still
um,
drying on that doctor.
you know what I'm saying? And it was funny because I would share stories with some of my other friends about me questioning. They looked at me like, "You question?"
You live
Yeah,
to tell
I was
this
like,
story?
"Yeah,
Look, they looking at you, probably looking for some bruises. You still got all your teeth?
yeah," like, yeah. And I remember having some of those conversations with my parents that, like, yeah, we didn't, I didn't raise you in that context fully. And there was so much that would get left on the table as far as who they could have been. And quite frankly, a lot of my contemporaries, they were violent. They didn't know how to resolve conflict through
Exactly.
exchange of ideas. Like it was, and that's where it came from. It's like, okay, well, this is how you've taught them how to
Nobody's
deal with.
expressing, and then we
Yeah,
wonder why they don't know how to express.
yeah,
And then you yelling at them, you're creating this tense situation where they're frightened that now their fight or flight mode is activated, or if I am I gonna say the wrong thing so they don't say nothing, Imma get the whipping anyway, so I ain't gonna say nothing.
yeah,
And one time, man, I was, so I'm from Racine, Wisconsin, and we're not that far from Chicago. So we're positioned between we're closer to Milwaukee, which is in Racine, but then Chicago is like an hour and change. Like the same, like how we got 495 out here,
yeah.
we use 94. And that'll take you way well,
Straight to.
yep, yep, take you straight there. But, so we had a lot of people that came up from Chicago. You know, the Great Migration. That's how my family even got there, right? From Mississippi, Great Migration. But a lot of people from Chicago ended up coming into Wisconsin. The welfare benefits were better. But also
Mm.
that meant that the gangs, right? Gangster Disciples, that's out of
Yeah,
Chicago.
vice lords.
Well, the neighborhood I grew up in, and in that city, it was more GD. And on Hoover, like Larry Hoover was like a celebrity. I don't know anybody that had met him, but they were saying his name all the time. But anyway, so we had a lot of violence, the gangs, the drugs, and things like that came, and even trauma. And I remember one time I was getting my hair braided by this lady. She was a friend's brother, girlfriend, baby mama, somebody, but she braid good hair. So I was like, I'm finna go get my hair braided, right? And I had never been by her house or anything like that, and, like, she would do my friend's hair, so I'm at her house, and she had, like, 3 boys and then a baby daughter, and, braiding be taking a minute.
Yeah.
And, I remember I used to judge them little boys. I'd be like, "Dang, them kids is bad," right? And then I was in the house with them when she's braiding my hair. When I saw the way she was handling them, she was a grown woman and she punched her son in the chest
Mhm.
in front of me in the house. Now I wasn't no mandated reporter in those days
Yeah.
because I would have had to report that. But
Yeah, for sure.
I was just blown away, and I was like, and then we tell him not to cry. You just punched a 6-year old. I don't know if he was 8. I can't remember. This was like 20 years ago or something. Punched this boy in his chest, and then he was supposed to take it? That is a boy, he is not a man, and you think you're making him a man by abusing him.
Yeah.
Oh, you are making him angry. You are creating a pattern for him to abuse women because this rage and resentment that he's experiencing is gonna develop from you, his mom.
Yeah. Or have a hatred towards women
It's
that can manifest in misogyny
Yep,
or what's the other word? Well, womanizing. Yeah.
all of it. Yep. Yep. But that just really blew my mind. But it's like, that's not the only way to deal with him. Like, they have a mind. They're not just a physical being. You need to talk to them too.
Yeah. Yeah.
More.
Yeah. 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 It was so it's funny you mentioned that because one of the main themes. So to give context to the study, there were two forms of analysis through the interpretive phenomenological analysis
Mhm.
or approach that I used. There was two themes that I focused on, which was thematic analysis
Okay.
and sentiment analysis. And thematic analysis is basically designed for to it's the things that come up in the transcripts
Uh huh.
repeatedly over and over and
Yep.
over again. And then the sentiment analysis is the emotions that
Okay.
come up in their accounts of their experiences. And for this in this context is like, okay, what were the emotions that followed and with them talking about the experience with discipline and what were the things that kept coming up in the
Yeah.
process of them talking about the experiences with
Yeah.
discipline, particularly corporal punishment. And so one of the main ones, since you brought it up in that account of that story with the hard hitting hair braider, heavy handed hair braider, right?
She was also heavy handed on my scalp.
I bet she was.
I said, she ain't braiding my hair no more.
I bet. She probably braided your hair if it's as violent she had. She punched them boys.
Not quite, but yeah, it was intense. I needed
Good.
Tylenol before, during,
Yeah, the
and
grip paper,
after.
just grip. Don't miss one strand. Anyways, one of the themes was emotional suppression and masculinity.
Yeah.
And by definition, that is the role of discipline in shaping masculinity through emotional suppression, resilience, and avoidance, influencing expressions of anger, sadness, and fear in the response of authority and punishment. And so here's the
Dr.
thing.
Green, hold on, hold on. You said a whole bunch of words. I need you to slow down for me as well as the audience so I can catch all of that. I love how you're just like your research is natural and that just flowed. But you gotta slow it down for the rest of us who are just new to this and tuning in
Yeah.
today. One more
Sorry
time.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
So the theme, one of the main themes in the thematic analysis
Mm-hmm.
was emotional suppression
Yes.
and masculinity.
Yes.
By definition, that is the role of discipline in shaping masculinity through emotional suppression, resilience, and avoidance influencing expressions of anger, sadness, and fear in response to authority and punishment.
There's so
And
much
so,
I'm hearing in that, my
yeah.
clinical ears, right?
Yeah. And so if you go back to the statement that I made earlier about we don't get in the masculine, we don't get to experience. That's what I was alluding to this thing.
Got it.
What ends up happening, what what ends up being suggested through these 16 men is that through the that child rearing practice, they learn that hey, you don't get to express your emotions. There's a higher price for you to express your emotions. There's a higher price
Yeah.
for you to act out. Just in general, there's a higher price, and so therefore you need to be mindful of that price in reference to not only yourself, but to really more so the comfort of others. And so that also defines your masculinity, which is not exclusive to African American men. However, if you consider how this society has been scared,
Mhm.
as well as attracted to African or African American men's masculinity. You have to
Yeah.
you have to you have to put that in context. And so I attempted to explain this into the idea of I need people to understand that this is about someone who happens to be a man, who happens to be an African American man, their ability to successfully navigate a society which either fetishizes them or vilifies them.
Ah,
It's a very close relation. It's a very close. It's a thin line. As they would say, between love and hate. You know, I'm saying that figuratively and literally. Like there's a
yeah.
thin line between that, and so you have to learn how to play that game early, depending upon
For
how you want to
survival.
navigate to succeed and to move forward and to develop social capital, even amongst your own people,
Yeah, absolutely.
even in your own community. Like you have to learn how to navigate that early.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I think about so many guys that I saw who had light. They were just like chill guys, but like they had to go dark or like harsh to be able to survive.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm like, what are you how did this happen? Like this ain't you, but it's who they needed to become so
yeah,
that because
yeah,
those who experience brutality in their home, they brought it outside to somebody who was a easy target or easy mark, and it's just like it just keeps spewing, it just keeps giving because
yeah.
they don't have outlets. So you talked about expression through the arts and things like that and sports, but some people don't get any of those things
Mhm,
or they don't
mhm.
have the grades to do those things. And so that might have been the one thing that gave them hope, but now their grades are down or whatever, they can't play football, they can't play baseball, basketball, whatever. Now they just
Yeah. So the code, just to give you context, the codes that came with that was masculinity expectations, which was cultural norms dictating toughness and emotional restraint in men, right? So that could be like, you crying, I'm gonna give you something to cry about.
yep.
Toughen up. Emotional regulation, managing and controlling emotional responses due to past discipline.
And I'm sure that
So
was
like,
non-existent or very low
yeah, so
because
I
it
mean,
wasn't modeled by their parents. If you jump into violence, that's not emotional regulation.
yeah, I think at some point, I think at some point, I didn't ask this question, but it would have been interesting to ask. I was like, was there a period of time where you began to become more tolerant into getting hit by your parents?
You have to, I think, to
Yeah, you,
survive it. Like you have to
yeah,
like go somewhere else. I'm sure
yep,
it wouldn't be surprising if a lot of them dissociate.
yeah. And honestly, I heard the dissociation,
Okay, how did that show up?
the lack of recall in certain things. Also, it was more so like I found the dissociation in a number of my participants could not consider, I'm going to say it like this, could not consider the possibility of how the punishment may have impacted them in other areas.
That's also the programming. That's also
Yeah,
the emotional detachment that was
that's
modeled
correct.
and programmed into them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Which was one of the high sentiments in the sentiment analysis or
Okay.
sentiment trends, which was detachment and objectivity.
See, listen, I told you when you send me your abstract, I said, "Oh, I'ma like this. Like I'ma be into this for real." Go ahead. This is good.
So the detachment is detachment and objectivity. So this was when the participants distances themselves emotionally, describing events without personal engagement. And
Huh?
so frequency across the transcripts, this was one of the ones that were high.
Oh.
There were three sentiment trends that were high. This was one of them. The other two was justification and rationalization.
Huh?
And then it's very on par.
Yep.
It's very on par. And then the other one was neutral acceptance.
So go back really quick because you and I know this lingo as Howard prepares social workers and licensed clinicians, right? What tell me talk about those defense mechanisms that you just said, the rationalization and
Yes. The rationalization and justification,
mhm.
that one was defined as when participants justified. corporal punishment as a necessary or acceptable within cultural and familial context, meaning that those individuals normalized their upbringing through the trial, period practice of corporal punishment based off of their understanding of not only their family,
Mhm.
but the overall experience with what they understood as being a part of the larger culture, which is Black culture.
Uh-huh.
So they saw it as, okay, well, this was necessary for me to have a better understanding and respect for not only myself but others in this environment. Me having a level of discipline, and also me being able to survive in potentially situations that may not be.
Mhm.
So that was what they were describing.
Yeah, I'm doing this because I love you. You're not gonna go out here and embarrass me, or I'm doing this for your own good so you don't get out there and act a fool and you get arrested or killed.
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that was a big part of it. One of the moderate ones that I like to speak on as well was humor and lightheartedness. And so like there's a lot of humor that was used not even just from with the 16 gentlemen that I interviewed, but also throughout my time as me this short time I've been living on this earth, and I've observed like people who happen to be famous or people who've been on camera for whatever
Yep.
reason, comedians talk
Yep.
about corporal punishment and the humor used in and I remember looking at these clips, and I used to say to myself, "There's something wrong with this. There's something wrong." It
Yeah.
was funny too. Do you remember the show Vibe with Chris Spencer? I think that was his name.
Who else was in it? I remember seeing him on the show, but I'm like, it would have had like one season. Did it go that long?
One or two, but he was
Okay.
back in the
I know it
90s.
was 90s because you said Chris Spencer and it was called Vibe. But
Well, it was
clearly,
based off the magazine.
right, right,
Right,
which was huge.
right.
Okay, okay, I'm with you now.
You
Yep.
remember him?
Dang, now I
The
remember
comedian.
him, but the
Yeah.
show, I'm like, it took me a second to go back in the archives up here in his brain. But yeah.
So I bring him up because I remember as a kid, he made it a point to ask all his guests, particularly the black ones, did they whoop their kids?
Interesting.
He always it's funny because I don't know if you knew this, but he had his daughter, his daughter or his child, son, whatever. They went to Howard in the past 5, 6, 7 years
Okay.
with Boris Kojo's
Yes.
one of his. And it's funny, if I had ever came in contact with him, that's probably one of the questions I would ask that brother. I said, "What what made why did you want to know that?"
Yeah. Or you could ask his kid, did your dad whoop you?
Hmm,
What did that look like?
right. Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. But these were the things that were coming up. I can give you other examples of the other sentiment trends, as well as
Yeah.
the other things. Like for example, resentment and criticism was another sentiment trend,
And I can
which
see how that could
instances where
easily.
where the participants express frustration and disagreement with corporal punishment. And also, let me say this to give you further context that some the sentiment of resentment and criticism came more so from Gen Xers and very much so with millennials.
Okay.
So as the age incre decreased,
Decrease, the resentment increased. I mean,
yes,
wait, as the age increased or decreased?
as age decreased,
Resentment
resentment
increased.
increased.
Okay. So they said we not with the program.
No,
We
no,
rebelling.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, that was definitely there. There was another subsection that originally I'd used, but I was not able to include it. And I do want to speak to that really quick is the structural coding. And the structural coding categorize responses according to the research questions,
Mm.
which those research questions, I created those under the contextualization of attachment theory.
Okay. Okay.
That's how that's how attachment theory was involved in this study, really.
Look, you see, I got excited. I was like, yeah, tell me more.
Let me actually go to my questions really quick to give you a better understanding of that. Let me see.
This is so funny that I was really like, "We're not gonna have a scholarly conversation," is very much that, and I'm
And it
all
is,
in. It's a but I hope
yes,
others can understand it. I know there's certain things like coding and stuff like that, but you've been breaking it down with the themes and, so hopefully we're not losing too many folks, but who wants the people that wanna listen, they gonna listen.
yeah, I pray so.
Yeah.
Um, okay, let me find this real quick.
I do have a real question.
What's up?
How many pages is your dissertation?
If you counting the references and the appendices,
Yep. All the full front to back.
it's like 300.
Ooh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's quite lengthy. All
Mm.
right. So the questions, one, I'm gonna give you a sample. There was two sections of the questions. One was exploring physical punishment in different family structures,
Okay.
and then navigating life after experiencing physical punishment. So I'll give you the first question. Can you recall the first time you experienced physical punishment by an adult or a family member? Was it severe?
Mm.
And then in navigating life after experiencing physical punishment, I asked, what is your conflict style? And do you see any way corporal punishment impacted your style?
And that's an open question. You didn't even give them categories on conflict style. Ooh. Ooh, okay.
Oh no, and again, in hindsight, I do sometimes feel like some of my questions I should have guided a little bit more,
Okay.
because I think a part of when you're dealing with individuals who have never really thought about, they've never
They
conceptualized
need
how
language.
this is related to this. I probably should have guided a little bit more. I should have gave a little bit more. Uh,
But you also wanted to get like rich data and let them, you don't
yeah,
want to guide their experiences and you miss something very valuable. I mean, you could put it into styles after if you wanted to based on what they said.
right, right. It was tough. The structural coding, for example, first encounters with corporal punishment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just before I go forward with this was not officially in my dissertation. It was part of the research that was found, but it wasn't in my dissertation. So this is actually going to be future research.
Okay. You're hearing it
So
here
one of the structure,
first.
yeah. So one of the structure code was early childhood experiences, first encounters with corporal punishment. What was stated was most participants recall receiving corporal punishment from an early age, often before they fully understood why.
Yes, that good old why.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Another area that I thought these findings were very, very intriguing, but it was recommended that I didn't touch on them at this time. Let's talk a little bit about impact on decision making.
Okay.
How how disciplinary experiences shape moral reasoning. Some participants linked their past punishments to improve decision making, while others felt encouraged compliance without understanding consequences.
Mm.
So that falls into the idea of corporal punishment is really good about immediate compliance, meaning that I don't have time to explain to you. You just do what the hell I told you to do.
Yep, because I said so.
And that's why the title of my dissertation is called Because I Said So.
Yep.
You know. And I don't know how many black folks will admit to this, but I have a suspicion
Mhm.
that part of the reason why we show up in our adulthood and dismissive of when people question us is because of how we were raised.
Yes, because we were dismissed. We weren't allowed to ask the questions. And so, even if our minds were curious, like we don't know what that end is because it got shut down. So, for
Yeah.
being curious, for wanting to know, and I love that you said that, but that also gets at attachment style, right? So, these experiences, so we're talking about children, they said at an early age, they didn't understand why. So, to me, that's an extreme fear, right? There's physical pain. It wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me if the majority of these people had a disorganized attachment or a highly
Yeah.
avoidant attachment style.
Yeah. Yeah. Which let's go to a little bit of let's go to the coping mechanisms that was
Yeah.
one of the codes.
Okay. Come
So
on.
how individuals dealt with discipline. Participants adopted various coping mechanisms, including avoidance, humor, compliance, and in some cases, internalized anger.
Yep. And the body keeps score.
That's
And
right.
it's only
It
gonna
was
be
all
so
there.
long before that cork pops with all that pressure building up.
It was all there.
Mhm.
It was all there. And so I found these themes and I said, well, I mean, it's pretty on par. Now, here's the other kicker about my study because of the limited number, um, and as well as some of the limitations of the study.
Yep. Can't be
These
generalized.
findings, yeah, they're not generalizable. However, they do serve as indication of what could be generalizable to the larger population of African American men. And granted, we didn't even really even get to the other associated outcomes that
Mhm.
have been found in other literature around corporal punishment. For example, when it comes to like health, like for
Yeah.
example, there was a study in China, large study
Mhm.
that there was an association between smoking cessation and those who had experienced corporal punishment growing up as kids, as well as high blood pressure
Uh-huh.
and heart disease.
Uh-huh.
And so in my literature review, I said, well, if this is considering that China, for the most part, not as much as it used to be, but if China, a country like China, which is typically homogeneous society for the most part, the majority of folks there are one and the same, and that was their health impact.
Mhm.
Surely, if we look at African Americans, particularly African American men,
Yep.
and we look at they said some of the three of the main things that we experience.
Yeah.
Surely there's some association, and I didn't even touch on that.
Right. There's so
I
much
didn't even
here.
touch on that.
You know what I'm hearing as I'm listening to this and when you're talking about how it's not generalizable? I think this could be a great if you wanted to continue this, this is where you could do a quantitative study. You have a
Oh
basis
yeah,
where you can use that to form your questions and survey a gang of people and get more responses and just yeah, this is good.
it's a lot. It's a lot that could be done. I'm trying to figure out what's the best. I know I definitely want to go into the quant space. I want to do a content analysis of
Mhm.
the when I was talking about like comedians and different people
Yeah.
talking about corporal punishment and finding the themes and what gets said in that
Well,
and that
that's
as
you
well.
can just do one comedian, and you'll find a lot of some of them, they have
True.
themes. Because Kevin Hart has made a career off of talking about his experiences, like, with his mother and his father.
Yeah.
More his father than anybody.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm like, yeah, that was a whole thing, like, if you go back or you could do a series. If you went back and did Def Comedy Jam or
Hmm.
Comic View, you're gonna hear it all through
Yeah.
there. So, yeah, that's another way to narrow it down, and that's fun. That's a fun way to do some research.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's a number of ideas that I'm brewing and cooking.
Well, just write them down, you can't do them all at once, and you need a break, bro,
I do.
like, for real. Because I was like, that doctorate work is
No joke.
It's no joke. I'm trying to remember the moment where I felt normal. I know I finished December 23. I don't think maybe I started to feel normal maybe to like August 24 or something, maybe. Like, I really don't even know.
When did you start your doctorate program?
Listen, that's a whole other story. I started in 2015. So I went from the master's right into the PhD here at Howard, but a lot of stuff happened. I took a year off. I was going through so much grief that I even had to slow down my coursework before I took my year off. Because I was like, it's gonna show up in my grades. And I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
about to fail out of this program. So then it was like it put me a year behind for certain classes. And then I took the year off. And then I was dragging my feet because I was up in my head about the dissertation for so long. And I was like, once I really like released it, everything just started rolling like fast. And I was like, girl, you could have been done like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But yeah, so I started in 2015, so it was quite the journey. I did have to even get an extension. And so like this journey, and I think, since we're having kind of like this conversation for anybody that's listening that might be interested in pursuing a doctorate, like this is different. Like less than 2% of the population, like in the US, and then it's like less than it's similar in the world too. And then when you put it in on African Americans, I don't know the statistic off the top of my head.
Yeah.
uh, It's definitely the road less traveled, and
I forget how rare we are. People say you know how rare I was like,
but when you're at Howard, where you're at Morgan, like in the HBCU community, where Howard is one of the largest producers of PhDs, doctors, attorneys, like all of these professionals, that is normalized where we are. But this is why we thrive here, right? Like, and we could talk about the research we want to talk about. Can you imagine trying to do this research at a PW, finding an advisor to support it? Right. So it's normalized when you're in the community, but we're outliers in the larger community. Like for real, we're unicorns. We're black unicorns.
I mean, my chair had me write in a way that the scholarship can't be denied, but it's very tedious to read. And what I
Uh,
mean by that is, I'm just being real. Most people I tell, I was like, well, what should I read? I said, you should read chapter one, and you should go to chapter four and five. If you go into the weeds of my literature review, you're gonna be there for a while
so you basically
because that's the
said,
largest.
try me if you want to. I did my homework.
Yeah, because like my dissertation is also a history lesson of the history of quantitative research as well as qualitative before we even get to like, oh, we chose. And
Yeah.
the reason why, because he wanted to sure like, this document is going to reflect, they're going to question your scholarship. So I was like, okay. And so
Yeah. It's a lot. I'm just glad. I'm glad you're on the other side. You're
yes.
intact. What do you plan to do for self-care for you? What, and this
I
is it, and you know what? It's deeper than self-care. Because self-care, I hope, is what got you through as much as what are you about to do for rejuvenation? Because you still, I'm hearing the research is not gonna stop.
yeah. Besides working out and talking to people and therapy, I'm not quite sure yet.
We going to get you a plan together, friend, because you
Not sure yet.
okay, that's a topic for another episode, right? Because like
Certain parts of it, like I'm involved in church.
those are all regular maintenance. I'm hearing
Yeah,
maintenance. Right. That's why I said we'll
I
talk.
think a part. I think a healthy part of the self care journey is admit that I don't have a. There's certain parts of it I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been in this state for so long.
But and coming out of it,
Yeah.
that's why I said we'll talk because you gotta do something because like what man, like you have your life back. You have your
Yeah.
life back. Like when people
Yeah.
have come to me and asked me, Jeannie, I wanna do a PhD, like what advice? And I'll be like, what you willing to give up? That's the first thing. What are you willing to give up?
When you were on the wall, did y'all have to learn if
I don't think so.
there's a line in if the things that you gave your life to,
Mm.
and you were in your PhD program as long as I was. You did an 8 year stint, and so much happened in that 8 and
Yep. And remembering, like, I got one of those boards. See, now we're shifting a little bit, right? Like to the underside of like the doctoral journey. And maybe
yeah,
we can do another, have you back again to talk more about this. Because I do want to kind of like wrap up and bring out the like, what can we do
for sure,
differently back on topic. But
absolutely.
I had to put up this board, where you can change the letters. And I had it and I posted it wherever I could, so I could always see it every day. Remember why you started. 'Cause there were so many times that it would've been easy to be like, "Whatever," but then I'm like, "Yo, I put in so many years, like, I cannot just, like, walk away from this either."
Yep.
Didn't really want to as much as that life kept challenging me. Like life was dragging me at one point,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the wind was just showing up in the places.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's hard to it's hard to be able to be present and to be able to formulate, synthesize articulate thought when you're being pulled in so many other directions. You're not grounded enough to come to those
Yeah.
conclusions, and thoughtful conclusions. In
Yeah.
other words, it's hard for you to be thoughtful when you're always
Your thoughts are
in high
consumed.
moments of stress.
Yep.
It's hard. It's hard. Some people argue that this is probably the worst paper you will write,
Yes, I've heard that too.
and there's validity to that.
But that's the idea. Like your scholarship is supposed to continue, right? So this is
Yeah.
just your introduction. It's not necessarily like, the music. Well, no, I was gonna say it's not like the music industry for some people, like where everything gets better from their first album, but some people it doesn't get better than their first album. But yeah, so I think maybe if you'd be open, we could come back and do another episode. Maybe this could be more of a panel call with other people like getting to the other side and like
Yeah.
surviving the journey. I don't even know if journey
Yeah.
is the word.
The whole thing.
Yeah, like it's a thing. Like, but I digress. Bringing us back to today's topic and your actual like research, right?
Yeah.
Let's like just kind of shift in a way. Were there any other high points you wanted to bring out before I shift us into the next phase?
Recommend probably more of the recommendations
That's what I was going to say.
of the
What
research.
can we do differently? Right. So I think we're moving in the right direction. So go ahead.
So one of the things that I talked about was that there were forgot which researcher did it, but in sociology, there was a sociologist, I think in the late 70s, that coined four extra parenting styles
Okay.
to appropriately describe how African Americans parent. One of them was no nonsense parenting.
Uh huh.
You familiar?
I lived it.
Right. Right. So, in one of my recommendations is that I think that African Americans who are interested in parenting their kids different should look to have a combination of no nonsense parenting, absent of the corporal punishment, but includes the practices from the book The Conscious Parent, which leans on the idea of heavy emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and regulation practices to
Yes.
ensure that their children can become more well-rounded in their ability to show up as human beings, but to express
Yeah.
their emotions, but particularly African American men. And so I recommend that we actually do the research. I think one of the laziest comments that I've heard from a lot of parents is that they don't they don't teach you how to, they don't teach you how to be a parent in the sense of like you can't find it in the book, and that's not true. There's plenty of research. Now, if it doesn't feel applicable, that's a different
Yeah.
conversation. But there's been plenty of research about parenting, and it kind of lends into the idea that, especially, we probably could make this critique to the generation of our parents, but we definitely can't say it now. But for a generation of people who are really big about the word intentional,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
you know, it wouldn't hurt for us to just read up on some other thoughts, some other strategies around this. And that recommendation is that it still needs to be culturally grounded. Their firmness for Black boys navigating an environment that does not view their humanity in the same context is still very much so necessary. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that we don't have to beat our kids to get that point across.
Right.
And the one of the ways that I know that to be true is that if your child grows up in sports or goes to a Black school, they don't get hit unless you permit that. Even still, you know what I'm saying? Like that they learn discipline there. So why is it that at home?
Yeah. But sometimes
Why
it's
is it at
language
home?
though, and those are invisible, right? The words, we don't know what happens when they take the words in.
So that's one of my biggest recommendations. I have recommendations for other research as well.
And even if people aren't big researchers or scholarly, like, we can digest the article like it's nothing, right? But like, there's so much information that's out there and people that are like you, right? And this podcast is an opportunity for you to put it out there. So if you can give recommendations, but also like by having this discussion, so people think social media is bad. Let me slow down. Almost anything you want to read about or learn about, all you gotta do is search it. Is somebody
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about it? Now you can find people that reinforce your views, but then you can also find people that are going to challenge you for growth and wise. And like, and if you know you have a gap, go get the information. And a lot of people, they can tell you more about what famous people are doing than investing in their own selves, their children, how to treat
Yeah.
their children, and it's like
Right.
you need to invest, it's worth it, so you don't know. So, "Well, I don't know what to start." We got Google, we have smartphones. You
Yep.
can ask almost anything. You just have to be willing, and so I'm not saying that with judgment as much as encouragement, so if you don't know where to begin.
I mean, but that the desire has to be
Yes.
there, and it can't be something. It can't be about entertaining you. It
'Cause
has
it's
to be
not
some.
gonna necessarily be
No.
entertaining, but you have to be invested.
Yeah, and that's simply what it is. This is a new skill. This is a new way, and I do, like I said, I think it's revolutionary in the sense that we talk about you teach people how to treat you. If we develop a community where we say we no longer hit our kids, that's going to resound differently when violent crimes against us happen. Because it's like, well, no, we don't treat. You ever notice when a parent or a child ever said, it may have been you or anybody for that matter said, "My own mama don't hit me," or my
Yeah.
right,
So my own mama don't do that, so I'm not gonna let you. Yeah.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
That probably should be the
Yeah, I
title one.
like and your titles are catchy. But what you're talking about is co-regulation, which leads to self-regulation. And so for our audience, co-regulation is like when you're a child, and this goes in with attachment too, right? When you're a child, how attentive your caregivers are to your needs, but like when you're having a difficult time, them coming with you, being sensitive to what you need or just even being present, right? Not trying to shut you down, not trying to silence you, helping to soothe you. So by them doing that, it's teaching you, the child, how to soothe. But a lot of people don't do that. Kids are crying and they be like, go sit down, go to your room. Like, and they are sent to go deal with these big emotions on their own, and no one's talking to them about it, how to understand it. So then they grow up and they act the fool, for lack of a better way to put it. And people are like, well, what's wrong with them? They never experienced co regulation to know what self regulation looks like, or they saw their parents or experienced their parents go up on them, go up on people. They just pop off, and that becomes a badge of honor
Yeah.
instead of having the time to just be present with the kid. Like, and I think some people, it's uncomfortable. But if a parent hasn't experienced co-regulation and self-regulate, a kid is going to adapt based on what that parent does and does not have, and in this case does not have. But what is it with? Then it's replaced with this negativity, this aggression, all these things. So the kid is taking all this stuff in, and so it is intergenerational what a lot of this is. So when you said like one of the most revolutionary things that we can do is to really, and no, I'm not a parent for any listeners. However, I do have a lot of experience working with families, particularly with adolescent children and their families, to build these connections so that they can have healthier relationships. And these were adolescents who had more acute mental health issues with histories of self harm, attempts, non fatal suicidal behavior, like really, really detrimental things, right? And seeing these families breaking these concepts down and just really seeing the unity and how they're able to attune to what the needs are of the kid, not what's bothering me. I don't have it to deal with you, right? Because this leaves imprints and people take these into their friendships and relationships. And then they end up in these unhealthy relationships and or abusive relationships or high
Yeah.
toxicity because that core relationship wasn't there. So this means the parent has to be willing to engage in their own healing. And a family can heal together, but sometimes in the instance, if this child had never had this severe mental health, some of them it was an episode, right? But if they hadn't had this severe thing, it would not have caused the family to seek out healing. They would have kept functioning and the way that they had that was causing all of this stress and this tension. And not always, because sometimes there were other factors, right? We know how mental health is very unique for the individual, but that co-regulation and that teaches a kid to self-regulate because if you show me an angry person, you're showing me a child who did not have their needs met, who did not experience co-regulation 9 times out of 10. I think that's not a real statistic, but yeah,
Yeah.
and we need those healing conversations between
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. It was very interesting to at my dissertation defense. I can humbly and proudly say that there was like over 67 people that showed up.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Virtually, but yeah.
Still, they showed up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it showed up, and that consisted of a lot of different ages,
Yeah.
demographics,
Excellent. And your
and it
research
was
reflects that too.
yeah, it was interesting to hear the responses. It was sparking a lot of conversations, and
Yeah.
it was fun. I wanted that, but it was funny because it definitely turned into lightning round,
Okay.
which is, I mean, it's a part of it.
Yeah.
I said I wanted to smoke because this is a community issue.
Yeah.
It's a community issue,
You
so
prepare for this.
yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say is one or two of the questions that resonated the most with you from that you got from the lightning
The
round?
defense.
Yeah, from the defense. So hold on. Let's back up, right? Because we got to break down to people so that they understand what happens, right? So when you are writing a dissertation, right, this is what is called that's like your it's not it's like okay, if you're an undergrad, this would be like a capstone paper, right? Or your thesis if you're in a master's program. But with those, you just get to write the paper, be done with it, your teacher grades it. There's a whole process to even get to writing a dissertation. You have to propose it. You have to put together your first 3 chapters. So that's like kind of like your background history, justifying why this is a relevant study. Then you have the literature review and then your methods. You have to propose and defend this to a committee and they say, yes, this is solid, go forth. Or no, do, or it's a yes with revisions, right? And you go forth, you get a IRB process. That's a whole other
Oh
thing.
my god.
The Institutional Research Board, so it has to get cleared. And in this case, he used human subjects, right? So it had to be clear. So there's extra rigor that goes into getting approved to do that. So you do
Yeah.
that, you get approved. That could take months. I've heard people say that it's taken a whole year or longer for them to even get that approval, which can significantly delay your time in the program. So
Yeah.
you get all of that. So defended your proposal, you got your IRB approval. Now you're free to go forth and collect your data and study, right? So then you get all the data, you analyze it, and then you write this big paper. As if that's not enough, you then have to put this together. I don't know about you, but at Howard, we had like 15, 20 minutes to talk about this big old topic that we've been working on for years to hit the
Mhm.
high points.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was like, what? Because you're trying to prove that you know all the stuff, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to cut it down. That's why that run through is important. So then you present it, and then you have to defend it. You have to be able to stand on business. The beauty of it, Khalil, and I don't know if anyone told you this or affirmed you in this way. The proposal defense part is the most difficult because you are submitting this to people who are already like scholarly, right? You're trying to get them to say that this is a worthy study, your method is correct, and all of that. But once you get to the other side, that's your research. You are now the expert. Can't nobody really tell you nothing about it. You just got to be able to know your data, answer the questions. And so I was fortunate to have Dr. Sandra Edmonds Crew as my advisor. She's former dean of Howard University School of Social Work, or dean emeritus. And she reminded me of that. Once I defended my proposal, she said, "You got the hardest part out of the way." She said, "You are now going to be the expert on this. This is your original research. You just got to know your research to answer the questions." So you walk in there as the expert, not realizing you the expert sometimes if no one told you, because that was a game changer for me. So you
Yeah.
get this lightning round. You're defending your original research at this point. So what were two of those key questions that resonated or things that really came out of it that you're like, man,
It's funny. One of them was from the audience. One of my classmates. She asked me. She was like, "What was the finding that surprised you?"
yeah, I want to know that too, actually. That's a good one.
When the camera was taken off and the interview was over with.
So you also recorded these too, they were video. Okay, that's important to know. Ooh, because even if you'd like analyze body language, oh, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, definitely.
And that caught my attention because I do telehealth. So I read a
Yeah.
lot in the
Yeah.
face. Yeah.
Yeah. So people were more candid about their situations. There was still a lot of protecting the idea of their parents from a
Yeah.
respect,
Yeah.
and you could hear it in the subtleties. Either they wouldn't tell the full truth of what happened until after, or they would say the thing that would be considered like, "Oh, that's horrible," and be like, "Oh, I love my."
Yeah. I mean, I love my mom, but, or like my mom is, she's the best person in the world. And then they say this awful thing.
Yeah, it
Yep.
doesn't change
Yep.
what they did in that moment was up. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse my French, but
Yeah.
that's I mean,
I was like,
that's
yeah.
hey, you know what I'm saying? I think we need to learn how, and I know it's easier said than done, but we need to learn to have space for the both and.
Yeah.
Our
The and
parents are
for
human.
sure. And
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Our parents are human. They made mistakes, and some of the mistakes they made on our behalf was severely impactful and damaging. And
we're
there
not
needs to be
judging
space for
we're not judging them for that.
yeah,
And I tell clients this all the time when I'm doing attachment theory with them and like having them do an attachment style like quiz. This is not about judging your parents. This is about your lived experience.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause that's hard for people.
But to assess that is to judge it because, to judge it is to say something was wrong with it.
To some
But I did
people,
the best that I could.
to some people, but it's not because we're talking about you. So I removed that so it's focused more on them, but understanding the origin and that your parents are flawed, right? Like, so
Yeah,
I try to frame it in a way so that they can focus on self, but also give them that pass, right? Because I know we're
sure.
programmed. Don't say something about my mama. Say say something, right? Like that's a whole thing right there. And we can't even hear the honesty. We can't even be honest about the experiences we have.
I think that comes from, and this again, this is going to be. I hope that our generation is better about this. Is that a lot of families, and I think this goes even outside of our culture, but particularly in
Uh-huh.
our culture, is that we raise our children to view parents as demigods. And it's a problem because how can I hold a demigod accountable? It's one of the reasons why and I relate that to one of the problems that a lot of millennials and a lot of Gen Zers and Alpha had a problem. Why there was such an exodus with the church is because, well, if I can't have a real relationship, if I can't be accountable, if I can't express in one of your other podcasts, there's a snippet where you're talking about this with a
Beefing with
gentleman.
God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Like how can I have a relationship? It's the same context with parents. It's like I see your shit, but I can't acknowledge your shit.
You just loose with the language today. Go ahead.
I'm just, I'm just, but speaking honestly. I see it,
Yeah.
but I can't acknowledge it.
Right.
I can't acknowledge it, but I'm supposed to revere you based off this idea of what you are,
That ain't
not who you really
Woo.
are.
It's listen, I was in a session with a client and we were kind of talking about that. I said, essentially, you grew up in a house of hypocrisy.
Absolutely, and most of us do in some
Do as
form
I
or
say,
fashion.
not as I do. We're telling you
Yes,
kids don't be a hypocrite, but then we're telling them be a hypocrite. I am a
that's right.
hypocrite
That's right.
and don't
That's
question
right.
it.
That's right. So they okay, again, people say, well, Dr. Green, why are you doing this research? In my tombstone, it will read, Dr. Green taught us how to be accountable.
Mhm.
And this is what this is really about.
Okay.
We can, as Black folks, we cannot talk about any other culture being accountable to our oppression until we are accountable to our oppression.
Absolutely.
We must look at how we are impacting each other. And so
Yeah.
again, this is just one example of that. Uh, my hope is that, as Nas says, more conscious how we raise our daughters, more conscious of how we raise each other. Just period.
Yeah. So
You know.
go ahead.
No, no, what you
No, I
about
was
to
gonna
say?
say, because I know we could keep
My
going.
foul
The
mouth.
second one, right? What was the second thing from your dissertation, like the questioning, the lightning round that stood out to you?
What was another memorable question?
Or even
Maybe the
feedback.
banter, the back and forth about me defining masculinity. My chair and I have gone back and forth about that, and it came out in the defense. It caught the attention of a lot of people.
Okay.
He has a genuine concern. His concern is around not being blackballed,
Okay.
stating stating masculinity in a way that could be maybe dismissive of other people's presentations, which is not that at all. It's not that at all. It's just more so about what is it in the context of this study.
Okay. That's fair.
But that was definitely a moment. Something, if I can say, not a question, but something that stood out. It was a moment that the moment I defended was really a moment where all this time, me attempting to explain the why this topic was so important,
Uh-huh.
it came it came because it wasn't just being understood amongst the four of my committee, but also the 67 people who maybe in passing heard me talk about this, but more so for the first time was really getting a chance to hear me present it in this way. And it didn't go over anybody's head. It was very, man, that's honestly the thing that I'm most proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our people heard it.
'Cause that was why you did it. Like, yes, you are in the ivory tower, right, of academics. And when I think our research, we have to, yes, we're writing to each other, right? Because we are showing that we what we've learned in like, the academic rigor, but if it can't be used or can't be consumed by the everyday person,
It's useless.
yeah, what good is it really? Okay.
It's useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to kind of wrap us up here, what do you think that breaking the cycle, like what would breaking the cycle actually look like in real life without shame or blame when we talk about corporal punishment and the impact that it has on African American men or black men?
Repeat that question one more time.
So, what would breaking the cycle, right, look like in real life without shame or blame when we think about corporal punishment and the impact that it has on black men? And I was gonna say, obviously, there's a trickle down from it, right? But so, what would it just look like without blame or shame when we think about that to break the cycle, those negative impacts?
I think what it would look like is that before the parents could do the work with the kids, a lot of parents would have to first do the work with themselves.
Yes, that's
And
it.
that's that's a social emotional, but as well as physical experience or demand as well. And the reason why I say that is because some kids get whooped, not because they're bad, but simply because their parents are out of shape
Emotionally.
emotionally and physically.
Okay.
What I mean is that there are parents who whoop their kids because they don't have the energy to really play and be active parent. There's a pocket of
Yeah, but I was gonna say what's wild about that is that it takes energy to do the corporal punishment.
Yeah, it
A
does, but,
whole lot
that
more of
seems to
it,
be that seems to be cathartic.
which is not what you should be doing. You should not be working out your stress on your kids.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a definite thing,
for sure.
so I think it's that would be the biggest thing. The one of the first words that everybody and their mama like to say now is, generational wealth. What about generational wealth?
Yeah, yeah,
This is about wellness.
yeah,
This really is this is about wellness. I am concerned about the wellness of our people.
yeah.
And so I am making this argument because we are still not well. We are in due process, but we are not well. And until we start having these intimate conversations about what makes us us, we're gonna struggle a bit. And money is not gonna resolve the deeper issues. We have seen a number of famous people that once they got once their
We
trauma
saw them acting out their
showed up.
trauma. We just gave them more
That's right.
resources to be more traumatic and
That's right.
traumatize others, and then secondary
Parties and all.
trauma. Yeah, well,
Right.
not just
Yeah.
him. I'm thinking about a few things, but yeah, but that's more recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is what I am urging. That is what I am begging for. We don't need more Black Lives Matter in the sense of protesting that way. We need to start doing the internal work.
I think that's an and thing, right? And I hear
You
you.
think you you think you
I don't
okay?
want anyone to think that that's not important and we need to do this. Yes, and so it's an and, but this is an add-on, right? But
Fair
high
enough.
priority, right? Like it needs to go to the top because we have a richer history in doing the other.
Yeah, fair enough. I received that.
Yeah.
That is my time. I was like, we done that to death. I was like,
Mhm.
we have to have some type of shift.
Yeah. And for some people that is easy to do because they're not like we talked about earlier, they're not ready to do that internal work. It's easier to look outside than to
Oh
to
yeah,
look inward. Or that's where some people they kind of compensate, you know.
it's painful.
It is
It's gonna
painful.
be painful.
And it doesn't, but it's healing, but we have to unpack the stuff because it's already painful. It's nothing new. Like
Yeah.
that's the other part of it. It's not new. We know that it's there. People have this stuff packed away. Like you talked about, avoidance was one of those big things that came out, right? Like in terms of how they're coping. Avoidance, lack of recall. People, this stuff is suppressed. And those things are still inside of you, and all of that stuff manifests. And so I think so to summarize, I heard like, so there needs to be individual work, there needs to be interfamily work and intergenerational work so that we have healing that like flows. Yeah.
Community work as well. So
Yes.
and my hate to cut
No,
you
you're
off, but
good.
I want to stress this. In my dissertation, I talk about doing work with faith-based communities,
Yeah.
doing those work in those organizations, because the place where people worship, they need to be behind it as well,
Yeah.
because they also play a role into normalizing the practice itself. Yeah,
There's a lot that's there. Okay, well, we can clearly keep on going, right?
for hours.
Yes, easily, easily. So I want to close us out with a signature question. So if you could
Okay.
leave the audience with one powerful truth to help them rise and thrive, what would it be?
One powerful truth. Man, so many things I've said recently. What's one that sticks out the most? I said, I'm upset at your humanity because I'm upset with my.
Break that down a little bit. You know my brain is processing over here.
I say I'm upset with your humanity because I'm upset with my own, because we are mirrors of each other. And so what we choose to call out in each other typically is a reflection of the things that we internally deal with as well. And so even me choosing to do this study is a reflection of how I was dealing with it. And so we need to continue to ask ourselves, what type of mirror do we want to be? The deeper question, what type of mirror do you want to be? Yeah.
With it. I'm with it. I'm like, I can
Yeah.
respond, but that's your closing. And that's how you feel. That's what you're leaving them with. And so I want to thank you again. So let's give Dr. Kahlil Green another round of applause. Yes, I'm gonna wear it out. I'm gonna wear it out every time I see you. Doc, doc, what's up, doc, doc, doc? Just get used to it, right?
Yeah,
Like you said, you forget how rare we are, and it's not a flex, but it's the fact, right? You earned
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
that don't mean that you got to go around telling everybody, "Call me doctor," but
No, I'm not. That's never my step.
right, right, right. But yeah, you earned it. All right, listeners and viewers, thank you so much for joining. And as always, you know we're not going to leave out of here without your own call to action. So we're going to reflect, take action, and affirm. So your reflection for today is: what messages did you receive about discipline growing up, and how are they showing up in your life today? And then we want you to build on this and go have a conversation with someone about how discipline shaped you and what healing looks like now. And if you don't know where to start, I think this could also be a great time to connect with a mental health professional, a support group. It could be a faith based group. Talk to a trusted friend or someone as well. That action could look like whatever's going to support you. But know that there are people that are licensed, prepared, and ready and to help you on your healing journey. And finally, your affirmation for today is: my healing creates room for legacy, not just for survival. Thank you again, Dr. Green, for joining. And for all the listeners, thank you, and viewers, thank you for joining us on Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole, where we are rising in faith and thriving in purpose. And we will see you next week. Episodes drop every Tuesday morning. All right, we'll see you next time.